Hey everybody, Matt Barton here with this week's Broker Minute or Two. And actually, I wanted to cover several things, but it's not going to fit into 1 week, so we'll break this down into some parts. So every quarter, we get an update from the Division of Real Estate, and some of it's interesting, some of it's not, but we should still pay attention to it. But I'll just say, on a personal level, it's kind of, I don't know, gratifying to have the division weigh in on stuff that I've been advocating with the agents for a multitude of reasons, not just because the DRE says so. And this week's message is in regards to agency. So I've shared this for many years with agents, and I still, for some strange reason, get resistance from some agents in regards to getting agency, which is, from a business standpoint, dumbfounding to me. But nonetheless, let me share with you my screen, and I'm going to pull up the Division of Real Estate rules, right? These are the things that govern us. And the section that I'm pulling from is the section known as the affirmative duties, right? These are the things you must do. And in fact, you can see in red here, it says an individual licensee shall, right? And that's pretty unequivocal language when it comes to the things the Division of Real Estate say that we should be doing. So for years, I've said, hey, listen, when it comes to agency, rule number 2, you can see this in red, says that an agent shall define the scope of the individual's agency by executing a written agency agreement between the individuals and the individual's principal broking, including, and then they give 4 or 5 instances, right? If you're representing a seller, you must have your agency in writing. If you're representing a buyer, if you're representing a buyer and a seller, there's even more disclosure there. Also, something that most people don't pay attention to is if you are doing property management services, which I would highly not recommend you do unless you're doing it in massive numbers at scale, because up until then, it tends to be a loss leader as far as money for your average agent. But if you do venture into that arena with all its restrictions, you have to have agency for property management as well. And then also, if you represent a tenant, you have to have agency defined. This is like unequivocal language from the Division of Real Estate. And I remember having a debate with a trainer that is still well known, so I will leave her name out of it to protect the relatively innocent. But she debated with me, and this probably goes back 10 years ago, that no, you don't have to have agency until you write an offer. I'm like, that is so not the case. Rule number 2, rule number 10. Anyway, so there's rule number 2. You have to have it in writing, right? It doesn't make any exceptions for this. And then when we go down to rule number 10, it says, and when, by the way, while you have your agency in place, then when you execute a binding agreement in a sales transaction, I don't know, like a REPSI, Section 5, you're to confirm the what? The prior agency disclosure and relationship, right? And so when I have these discussions with agents, I try not to be condescending, but it's like, these are like hard and fast rules that govern our licensure. And I always tell them it's not just about getting sideways with the DRE. If you don't do what you're supposed to do per your licensure, you then potentially take on liability in civil suits, right? If somebody hires you to do a job and you're not doing the job as defined by the Division of Real Estate, and somebody put trust in the fact that you're a licensee and supposedly doing what the Division of Real Estate advocates, and you don't, then all of a sudden you're in the civil liability game. All right, so I'm going to jump back to just the administrative. If we go to, I took a snippet from the Division of Real Estate newsletter, and Mr. Flanders was cited. This was in the Q4 newsletter, and I want you to pay attention to the highlights. Flanders admits that he represented a buyer in making multiple offers to purchase real property without first, rule number 2, obtaining a written agency agreement in violation of administrative rules. And then Mr. Flanders agreed to pay a civil penalty of $4,000 and complete 3 hours of continuing education because of this violation. Now, those that pay attention to the Division of Real Estate, their standard fee is about $500. So if you're reading between the lines, how important do you think this is becoming to the Division of Real Estate to levy a fine of $4,000, right? And we recently had an instance with a civil lawsuit where, we've got errors and omission insurance in place, But one of the first things, one of the first places what the insurance company went was, did you guys actually have agency? Because if they're not your client, we potentially don't have to pay out. So there is a whole host of reasons with the backdrop of the national lawsuits that are going on that fundamentally center around agency. Very, very important that, especially now, that you're paying attention to this from the DRE, from civil lawsuits, and just other reasons to do it. Let alone just taking that on head on and saying, you're hiring me to do a job, and I am going to work for you, and establishing that relationship so that people have and understand the value that you're bringing to the table, and us as an organization bringing to the table. So I hope that brings some things into clarity and focus. If they were blurry for you in the past, it shouldn't be blurry. It's very clear, and I hope that information helps you. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon.